Hello everyone, welcome to the Forest of Memories. I'm Zaruk Windcaller, your guardian, your high remembrancer, and your arbiter. Reminiscing bard of Twilight, of course, and today we're going back to my roots. Before we head into Dishonored, we're going to be checking out a Oversimplified's new video today. And for all of you people watching on YouTube, hello, I hope you're doing well. I'm Zaruk. You can check me out at twitch.tv/Zaruk Windcaller, where I play a variety of games and talk history because I'm a nerd. But for now, yes, we are going to be checking out Oversimplified's final video on the Second Punic War. It's been a long time coming, but it's finally here. I'm super excited, and I want to check it out. A lot of you guys liked my review and talk of the first two, so now we're going to finish this thing off. And trust me, the Second Punic War gets even crazier near the end. So, with that in mind, there we go. Now, without further ado, we can finally dive into this thing. I apologize in advance for the ads, but you know, there's not much I can do about it. So, meh. All right, let's go.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link in the description to get an exclusive deal with 4 extra months. Head
How's the audio, by the way? Can y'all hear it okay? Do I need to turn? Here we go.
over to the merch store to pick up some character pins, calendars, and more. Also, ever needed to enact vengeance on your enemies, but always felt too shy? Well, fear not. Little Hannibal is here. Support our channel by heading over to oversimplified.youtube.com and buying your very own pocket-sized piece of vengeance. Our exclusive Hannibal figure is in limited supply,
I want him.
so get it quick.
I'll have to do that. And we'll talk about all this in a minute. He's only gotten better and better with his animations. I'm thoroughly impressed. Finally, okay. So, by this point, things are not going well for Rome. Most historians count Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae as the 3 victories, and exclude Ticinus, which is the first skirmish. But here's the deal. By this point, this is not good. Rome has never fought anything like this. Most of Rome's victories, sure, they've had costs, but never like this. And y'all need to remember, this is not the Roman Republic at its height, or even the Roman Empire. This is Rome, who's only recently taken all of Italy. And not even that. Like, the northern part of Italy, where I think it's Cisalpine Gaul, is still causing them trouble. So Rome is not at its height yet, and doesn't even have maybe a third of the strength it's ever going to have. And not to mention, Rome had to watch as a good chunk of their fighting men just died at Cannae. And remember, Cannae was not a hard-fought loss. No, it was a slaughter. Between 60 and 80,000 men killed in 6 hours. Which, yeah, that, to our modern ears, that sounds absolutely insane. And it is, because that's a lot of dying. That's a lot of people dying in a short amount of time. But to Rome, yeah, this is the nightmare scenario.
How do you solve a problem like Hannibal? In a crisis such as this, the Romans often turn to religion. What's going on? Are the gods mad at us? The gods must be mad at us! But why? Why? No, why? 2 of the Vestal virgins broke their sacred oath and lost their virginity. That's why Hannibal's kicking our ass. What should we do with them? Appease the gods! Bury them alive! Who did they even boink? It was those guys! Huh? What should we do with them? Beat them to death! Needless to say, the Romans were freaking out.
It should be noted that despite the fact that the Romans like to call themselves the pinnacle of civilization, there was a lot of barbarism in Rome. A lot of it. A lot of it religious. Barbarism, of course. But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that Romans were, well, a lot of ancient people were extremely superstitious. And the fact that...
Stop!
Well, yes, I know. There's an ad going. That's why I'm not playing the video. But the Romans were extremely superstitious. They weren't the only ones, of course. Like, a lot of ancient cultures were superstitious. But the Romans... The thing is, the Romans literally tied a lot of their religious beliefs to their actions and to their wars, specifically. It's one of the reasons why hundreds of years later, you know, with this new Roman civilization, or empire that had been built, this massive Roman culture, it's why when Jesus came along and started preaching, you know, be kind, love one another, help thy neighbor, look after the needy, the Romans wanted him dead, because the problem was that it goes against Rome's very culture. Romans literally believed that they were better than everyone else, and because they were better than everyone else, they had the right to spread their culture and their civilization however the hell they wanted. And in that case, that meant through force in most cases. It's like that Star Wars joke of, you're being rescued, please do not resist. But in this case, it's, you're being civilized. Don't resist. We're from Rome. We're here to help. So, what this meant in this case with Hannibal is that for the longest time, you know, Rome had basically been on a winning streak. Even during the First Punic War, Rome kept getting its butt kicked, but they never gave up. And that's the key thing about Rome. The Romans had a saying that basically translates to, you are not defeated unless you accept defeat. And this basically meant that unless the Romans were willing to capitulate, they would keep fighting. And the Romans would never capitulate because it went against their very nature, their very culture. So that wasn't going to happen. In fact, in Rome, at the temple of Janus, or it's either Janus, or Janus, I don't know how you say it, which I believe is a Roman god of time, I think. Again, someone will fact check me on that. But the gates to that temple would be closed or open depending on if Rome was at war or not. And if the gates were open, then Rome, there would be nothing but war, basically. The gates of Janus are open, there is nothing but war. Until those gates are closed, it was basically a way of showing that Rome was never going to stop fighting. And this is something that Hannibal deserves a lot of criticism for. But I will address that if Oversimplified brings it.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Hey, Grenex. And yeah, I will bring that up, you know, if Oversimplified mentions it later. And yes, well, you'd think that, Andrea, that the Romans didn't care about Christ. They actually did, because it was causing, yes, it was true that the Jewish population was raising a big stink about him, but as Christ's teaching spread, they realized, oh no, if this peaceful, humble, modest way of thinking spreads, we're not going to have the aggressive, conquering culture we need to maintain the empire. So this guy's got to go. And it's why they started cracking down on Christianity as time went on. Mind you, that's with any empire, really. When some new religion or new thought process comes along that's going to upset the natural order, naturally people crack down on it. We still see it today, for Pete's sake.
Okay, now that that's out of our system, let's go find a real solution. The real solution, first of all, involved raising a new army. Remember, at Cannae, Hannibal had wiped out the biggest army Rome had ever fielded. possibly 20% of Rome's military-aged men. Rome needed to replace those losses, and fast, before Hannibal arrived at their gates. But where would those replacements come from? Rome had a few ideas. Quick! Lower the age of conscription! You! Put down those Digimons!
Oh, come on. And for those who don't know, that was a first generation Digivice and a Gatomon toy. I can actually back it up a bit so y'all can see. Hang on.
Quick! Lower the age of conscription!
Yeah, he's got an original Digimon Adventure Digivice, and that's a Gatomon plushie. That's actually pretty adorable.
You! Put down those Digimons! You're a soldier now! Enlist all these slaves with the promise of freedom! And equip them with all these religious weapons and armor! Anything we've got! All right, men, you are Rome's last line of defense. Man the walls! After the earth-shattering defeat at Cannae, the Romans expected Hannibal to arrive at their gates any day now. In Hannibal's camp, the mood was triumphant. We did it! We won! So when do we march on Rome? Today? I'm free in 10 minutes. Whoa, slow down. We're not going to Rome. We're staying right here. Are you an idiot, Hannibal? No, I'm smart. We don't need to march on Rome, because after what we did, the Romans are definitely going to surrender. Watch. Hey, Jim Bob. Yes, sir? Go to Rome and discuss peace terms. Yes, sir. Hey, I'm here to discuss peace terms. Piss off! They told me to piss off! What? They didn't surrender? No! And they were mean! Hannibal was learning that Rome had an unprecedented attitude towards surrender.
Like I said.
Even when Hannibal offered to ransom thousands of prisoners back to Rome, a pretty common practice in ancient warfare, the Romans refused, opting to let their own men be sold into slavery rather than paying a penny to the enemy. It was clear that in order to defeat Rome, you had to annihilate them. If any Roman man was still standing, you hadn't yet won. But still, Hannibal decided not to march on Rome, and it was a controversial decision. Even one of his own commanders famously told
I know
him,
this quote.
Hannibal,
you know how to win a battle, but you don't know how to win a war. So that's not really fair. Well, okay, you could technically swing it both ways. Some people say that's justified telling him that. Other people say that's not fair. I'm actually in both camps because, one, on the hand of it not being fair, Hannibal is not a siege commander. Hannibal is a battlefield commander. Hannibal's army lives and thrives off defeating its enemies, taking spoils, and, using that momentum to push further. Hannibal's also, going around in southern Italy right now, turning Rome's allies against her. A siege would require months, years of time, and who knows how much equipment. People don't understand how long and expensive sieges are, especially in the ancient days. And it's not as easy as just, let's build some catapults and take down the city. That's not how it works. You would need to build the siege engines. You're going to need to build defenses. You're going to need to surround your enemy, which that's another thing. Hannibal definitely does not have enough men to surround Rome. He does not have enough men. So, and not to mention, it's not like the Romans are just going to let him lay siege to Rome. They have men. They will raise an army and fight. But the key thing also is that Hannibal doesn't really have any siege experience. He had the one siege at Saguntum back in Spain at the start of the Second Punic War, but since then, Hannibal's never really fought a siege. And sieges are very different from straight battlefield battles. They are completely different. You need a different mindset. You need different tactics. You need a lot more stuff. And also by this point, Hannibal has made one of the biggest mistakes that generals, both ancient and modern, continue to make. If you do not understand the mindset of your enemy, you will never win. As Sun Tzu says, know yourself and know your enemy, and in 100 battles, you'll never lose. Hannibal knows what he's capable of, but he continues to underestimate the Romans and doesn't know how they think, at least from a grand scale. He knows how their individual commanders think, but he doesn't know how the individual, person or how Rome itself thinks. And because of that, Hannibal will continue to use the same tactics, thinking that eventually the Romans will surrender. And this is where the other camp comes in, saying that this is on Hannibal because he should have just marched and laid siege to Rome, which, yes, there is some credibility to that. If he had gone to Rome, then Rome would have had to scramble to put an army to the field, which he would have most undoubtedly defeated. But even then, you still have to lay siege to the city. And to be fair, there have been arguments made that if he surrounded Rome, he could have called on, the southern territories in Italy that were now openly defiant against Rome to send support and troops and other stuff. But again, hindsight is 2020, and we were not there. And most of the scholars are very, very politically oriented on their writings, and most of them wanted to make Hannibal look like a monster and make the Romans look like, perfectionists. So take what you can get.
From Hannibal's perspective, perhaps he knew his army was designed to survive behind enemy lines and sow chaos. It may not have been well equipped to undertake a risky siege of one of the most fortified cities on Earth. Plus, with many of the southern cities defecting to his side after Cannae, Hannibal likely thought things were going pretty well. As is, we'll stay the course. Okay, so the Romans didn't surrender after 3 major defeats. But surely they'll surrender after 4. Unfortunately for Hannibal, however, after Cannae, the Romans well and truly learnt their lesson. Well, would you look at that? Remind me, who was it that said Hannibal was too dangerous to fight? You. And who said we shouldn't fight him directly? You. And who tried to fight him directly?
We did.
Us. And what happened? We lost 20% of our military-aged men. That's right. So tell me, when Hannibal approaches, what do?
We run away.
We run away. I'm a genius. Clap for me. After Cannae, Fabius Maximus kind of became the unofficial leader of Rome. Even if others were elected consul, his influence was unparalleled.
Now, this was a frightening thing, actually. There were fears that Fabius Maximus could have done some horrendously tyrannical stuff at this point. Because yes, right at this moment, he was basically the man in charge. Because from now on, everyone's gonna... Hey! Oizuko, thank you for the biddies. I appreciate it. I thank you for the biddies. I don't know why my throwing system thing didn't work. It should have. I'll have to check that out in a sec. But yes, regardless, yeah, Fabian was the man in charge at this point, and he could have done some really tyrannical stuff. The consuls would go back to the Fabian strategy of, boxing Hannibal in to stop him from doing anything. And it's a miracle that Fabius, just decided, no, I may be the unofficial leader right now, but we're just going to handle things the way it should have been handled. Just do what I said in the first place. And yeah, unfortunately, later Romans wouldn't have his same integrity. As we know, other Romans would have other ideas about being the one man in charge of everything. And the joke may be, I'm a genius, clap for me, but to this day, we still use his tactics. The Fabian strategy is still used today. So, no, the man was a genius. Anyway, real quick, I'm actually going to check my thing here. Why
the most terrifying thing to Romans was a Roman with the most power.
Correct. But yeah, Fabius Maximus, now the most powerful man in Rome. And yeah, many... Like Ferris said, the most terrifying thing to Romans was a Roman with the most power. But at least this one had integrity.
And Rome quickly reverted to the Fabian strategy of avoiding Hannibal. They knew they couldn't defeat him, so instead, they hoped they could at least contain him. They raised an impressively large number of men, partly by enlisting teenagers, slaves, and criminals. And rather than trying to fight Hannibal, they instead turned their attention towards those treacherous southern cities that had switched sides. Thanks for joining the winning team, guys. Here's the deal. All you have to do is provide me some troops and defend your own city, since I'll be too busy to defend it for you. Now, I'm going to briefly turn around, look this way, and when I look back, you better not be being massacred by the Romans. Oh, for goodness sake! The Romans spread out their newly formed legions and began attacking the southern cities here, there, everywhere. The southern cities expected to have Hannibal's protection, and Hannibal was inundated with requests for help. He was forced to run around southern Italy, trying to encourage defection while rescuing his own allies. But when he showed up, the Romans would often leave, only to come back the second he went away again. And as these southern cities found themselves being punished severely by the Romans, they began to realize that joining Hannibal may not have been such a good idea. Hey! You think you're so big? Attacking my allies? Why don't you come out and face me? Because you're scary!
Yeah,
The
he
fickle
was.
southern cities frequently switched sides depending on who appeared to be winning, and the whole situation became a nightmare for Hannibal to control.
This is one of the difficult things that comes with managing, defecting or small allies who've joined up with you, defection or not, is that you can't be everywhere at once. And this also includes like territory you own. You can't be everywhere at once. And if your territory can't protect itself, then, well, your job just got a lot harder. This basically, Hannibal's put himself in a position where he's basically lost the initiative and now has to respond to everything the Romans do, whereas before they were responding to him. So, how could he have gotten out of this? I have no idea. Some historians say the smarter thing to do would have been to, after Cannae, go immediately south, rally all of the turncoat cities and gather as many men as possible, and then march to Rome. Because at that point, the Romans have two options. Either they can go south and start punishing these cities, or they can stop Hannibal as he marches toward Rome. But time has always been a key factor in war. And the problem is that the longer Hannibal stays down here playing reversey, taking towns, losing them, taking them back over and over, he gives Rome time to build up their numbers, build up their defenses, and, well, use other options to win the war, which they end up doing. War always has a ticking clock on it, especially when you're fighting an enemy that outnumbers you, outguns you, and can outsupply you, which the Romans can do. So, honestly, like, Hannibal should have been like, okay, we just won at Cannae. I know we're tired. Let's go south. Let's gather as many people as we can, and then we'll start heading toward Rome. Now, there is another reason Hannibal was struggling, but I'm willing to bet Oversimplified's going to talk about that. So put a pin in the fact that Hannibal seems to not have a lot of support. Put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it at some point.
Playing a constant game of Roman whack-a-mole to fend off the enemy armies.
I just realized with the Power Ranger toys over here, I know it's not intentional. I know it's supposed to be like their helmets, but because of the dots on the heads, those just look like Pac-Man heads or big smiley faces. I know y'all probably can't see it. Let me move out of the way. They look like little creepy smiley faces. All right. But yeah, at this point, it's basically whack a Roman legion. Because wherever they go, he can't put them down.
Having not long ago seemed near extinction, the Romans had managed to turn the situation around by placing Hannibal in a clever predicament. If he left southern Italy, the southern cities would likely capitulate to Rome, meaning he couldn't leave. And since the Romans wouldn't fight him, he couldn't inflict any more dangerous defeats. For now, Hannibal had been muzzled. Southern Italy had been his prize for his impressive Italian campaign. But those clever Romans found a way to take his prize and turn it into his prison.
And again, time is the key thing here. By this point, it is too late to act. Hannibal can't do anything anymore. What he should have done the moment this stuff started happening with Roman forces attacking the southern cities, immediately what he should have done was said, okay, we need to pull them away. I need to pick somewhere where these armies have to come and fight me. Like, they have to come fight because, this is important or it's too dangerous to ignore. So, with that being the case, again, he could have gone for Rome at any time, but that it's too late now. He cannot make that movement. If he went toward Rome now, he doesn't have the manpower to even threaten the city, I'm pretty sure, by this point. So the Roman forces attacking the southern cities are just going to ignore him. And now, granted, there are other options you could resort to, but those would be, but again, they wouldn't work. Like, the other option you could resort to is just being an absolute monster. You could basically burn, destroy, and ruin everything. Just carve a path north, burning and destroying everything. But he had done that before when Fabian was dictator. Like, years early, before Cannae, he'd been doing that, and the Romans hadn't taken the bait. So in this case, they probably wouldn't take it again. And given the fact that Hannibal's men need to live off the land, burning it doesn't really hurt anyone except him. So at this point, the man is thoroughly stuck. Now, if he had more men, he could probably, break this containment. But like I said, put a pin in that. We'll probably come to a point where we are told why he doesn't have any more men.
With the Fabian strategy neutralizing Hannibal for now, the Romans were freed up to refocus their attention to other fronts. This whole time, while we've been discussing Hannibal and the Italian campaign of the Second Punic War, fighting had actually been occurring elsewhere. For example, in 216 BC, the Romans had sent an army north to punish the Celtic tribes that had joined Hannibal. However, as the Romans entered the Latana forest, little did they know those clever Celts had set up a trap.
Man,
The Celts dropped trees on them, decimating the Romans.
Man, this seems familiar. Romans don't get along well with trees and forests.
And they even took the commander's head to use as a religious sippy cup.
Okay, that's disturbing.
So that went pretty bad.
Yeah, but Roman legions and forests don't mix. I haven't heard of that battle, but I think everyone knows about another battle that's going to happen about 200 plus years later. That one, everyone knows that story involving Romans and forests and German people and trees. Everyone knows that one.
Whoa, very bad. But
Ooh, oh God. Okay, I mean, if I hadn't heard earlier that they had raised 200,000 more men, I would have been concerned, because that's a lot for one battle. But that's at least, 4 legions? Yeah, that's 4 legions, because a legion is roughly 5,000 men. So that's 4 legions. Ooh.
thankfully, in other theaters, things were going a bit better. For example, let's look at Sicily. After Cannae, internal chaos in Syracuse caused this longtime Roman ally to switch sides, because being a winner is more fun. The Carthaginians also landed troops, hoping to retake their lost island, while Roman proconsul Claudius Marcellus moved in to besiege Syracuse. The
When the
siege
trees speak
was
Gaelic, you know you screwed up.
Correct.
a brutal slug for the Romans, largely due to the presence of one famous scientist and mathematician, Archimedes. He lived in Syracuse at the time, and he invented a variety of clever contraptions to defend the city. There was a giant claw that could grab and destroy Roman ships, and purportedly even a big mirror that could magically ignite them.
Now, of course, the Mythbusters have proven that this one was probably more myth than reality, but the other one that he had were extremely strong torsion catapults. Archimedes had basically come up with this like extremely long range and powerful catapult that could throw ungodly amounts of weight further than any other catapult around. I don't know the exact details about it, but we're talking about something like that could probably you guys know, if you've seen Lord of the Rings Return of the King, if you've seen that bit with that Minas Tirith, those trebuchets that are like throwing hunks of the castle or parts of the city at the orcs and everything. Yeah, think those, basically. Like, they're scary. But even then, this was a foregone conclusion as soon as the Romans surrounded Syracuse.
The Carthaginian forces on the island attempted to come to Syracuse's rescue, but luckily for the Romans, they all got diarrhea and then died. Finally, in the city itself, the day of a big annual religious festival came, and the Syracusans said, "Well, fellas, we've been holding off the Romans for over a year now. I think we've earned ourselves a little party." Sir, we're still under a massive siege. Are you sure? They'll probably take advantage of it. Well, Carl, I'm taking advantage of the open bar. Sir, they've got battering rams. Well, Carl, I'm ramming these hors d'oeuvres into my mouth. Sir, they'll tear down our walls. Well, Carl, I'm tearing it up on the dance floor. Sir, they're literally at the gates. Well, Carl, I'm literally at the cheese platter. Marcellus took advantage of the drunken festivities, stormed the city, and plundering ensued. In the chaos, Marcellus ordered Archimedes be captured alive.
Now, if I recall correctly, someone will have to correct me on this. I'm pretty sure Marcellus, either something happens to him or his army after this, because apparently, I guess Artemis didn't look too kindly on the Romans attacking during her festival, because apparently something happened to Marcellus. I don't know the full details. I'm very fuzzy about it. But I do know that they don't get Archimedes. So that might have been the punishment, because they did want to capture Archimedes alive. And I think everyone's heard this story before, that they tried to take him alive, and the Romans couldn't get him to come with them. So rather than, subduing him, they just said, screw it, stab the old man.
Some sources say Roman troops entered Archimedes' home, and they were like, "Hey man, are you the math guy? Go away, I'm drawing circles. Look, I just need to know if you're the nerd. Come on bro, get out of here, you're messing up my circles." Now is not a good time to draw circles. It's always a good time for circles. I love circles. Either stop drawing the circles or I kill you. I choose the circles.
Yeah, basically they came in, swords drawn, and he was working on a mathematical proof, and all he told them was, "Do not disturb my circles."
Despite not securing Archimedes, by 210 BC, the Romans did secure Sicily, and also put down a Carthage-supported rebellion on nearby Sardinia. 2 Roman successes, and there were more to come. After Cannae, King Philip V of Macedon saw an opportunity. He was concerned with recent Roman expansion into Illyria, and so, when he saw Hannibal annihilating the Romans in Italy, he said, "Oh my gosh, hey! Hey, Hannibal! Oh my gosh, you're so cool! Let's form an alliance and annihilate the Romans together!" Sure. Yes! Hannibal hoped to secure Philip's help in fighting Rome, but a Roman army was sent to the region, stirred up Philip's other Greek opponents, and essentially kept Philip bogged down in Greece for the entire duration of the war.
Let's back up for a second so I can talk about those other factions.
Philip.
So let's talk about those other factions against Macedon, and it is
sent to the region,
stirred
up Philip's other Greek opponents.
In that part of the word, it's Macedon, not Macedon. So after Alexander the Good Boy, or Alexander the Great, died, his generals and his other leaders kind of tore his empire into pieces. And the remaining powers, at this point in time, are Pergamon over here, and the Aetolian League. A lot of people don't know about these guys. The Aetolian League are an interesting footnote in Greek history. The Aetolian League is literally an assembly of Greek city-states with Sparta at their head. Hi, Future Zaruk here. That's all blatantly incorrect. I got my leagues mixed up. What I was thinking of was the Achaean League. The Aetolian League existed long after Sparta's basic collapse, and the most powerful members of the Aetolian League were all of the southern city-states. They were actually capable of resisting Macedon for a good amount of time, and they were, as you're about to see, one of Rome's first allies in the Greek area, but they were considered a barbaric type of Greek because at that time Macedon was considered the premier Greek. But yeah, so ignore everything you're about to hear about Sparta and running the Aetolian League, because yeah, no, that shit's not true. I got that blatantly wrong, and I am very sorry. If you would like to know more about Sparta being the leader of its own league, that is the Achaean League. But yeah, the Aetolian League were a completely different group. So yeah, Future Zaruk here, just saying that even I can be stupid and make mistakes. Basically. So, like, the Aetolian League were formed, I believe, after Alexander's empire collapsed. For those who don't know, Alexander and his dad never conquered Sparta. Now, they could have if they wanted to, but the myth about Spartan warriors being like demigods, and that they were badasses basically kept Philip and Alexander away. And they basically decided, yeah, we could crush these guys, but we would be better using them like as a distraction for anyone else, like so no one thinks to try anything. But by this point, yeah, the Aetolian League, all of southern Greece is basically united under the Spartans. However, problem is that this will not last, because after all this happens, Philip does fight a battle against Lavinus, or Lavinus, however you say that. And Philip, I believe Philip V dies in a battle against Rome at some point. And shortly after, given a few more years, this Illyrian Spartans, well, okay, so were the Spartans really as badass as the stories were led to believe? They were and they weren't. They were and they weren't. By the time Alexander the Great was coming around, it wasn't Sparta that was the premier power anymore. It was Thebes. The city of Thebes was the most powerful city-state. The Spartans just had this myth and this legacy, this whole image of their superhuman ability and their crazy stuff that they'd done. And by the time, like, the problem is Spartan society can't really function, because all of their young men are sent off to be soldiers, and those that don't die during the training become warriors and soldiers. But then the only way they get to retire is if they live to be like 60. So they either die or come back old men. And most of the stuff done in Sparta is done by slaves. Like 70 to 80% of Sparta's population were the helots, the slaves. So eventually, Sparta falls due to a helot uprising. Like 80% of the population says, yeah, no, we're not going to be enslaved by these guys. And they actually rebelled because Sparta's whole civilization was unsustainable. And again, by the time of Alexander, they're not a footnote, but they definitely don't have as much reach as they used to. And it's Thebes and their sacred band that are the most terrifying thing on the battlefield. And then Alexander the Great and his dad showed up and, showed the Thebans and their allies who the real masters of Greece were. But that's a story for another time. Basically, by this point, though, yes, they've the Spartans down here in bright red have unified, or quote unquote. They've basically formed a loose confederation, like I said, called the Aetolian League, that hates the Macedonians. And yeah, they were willing to work with the Romans to keep Philip V bottled up. Unfortunately, that will come back to bite them in the end. But hey, what can you do?
And essentially kept Philip bogged down in Greece for the entire duration of the war. Another kind of Roman success. But the main...
I mean, it is a Roman success. The Romans like to take credit for stuff even if they didn't do it. So technically, even though the Romans didn't conquer Macedon, the fact that they were able to unify Macedon's enemies against her and keep Philip V bottled up, no, the Romans literally would have said, yeah, we did this. This is our victory. You guys are doing the fighting, but we're the ones who organized it, so it's our victory. Because the Romans were kind of assholes about all that.
front Rome was hoping to push Carthage back in was Spain. The riches of Spain made it one of Carthage's most valuable possessions, and the Romans were eager to weaken it. Remember way back at the start of the war, the consul Scipio was supposed to go to Spain, but ended up rushing back to Italy when he realized Hannibal was crossing the Alps. He then faced Hannibal at Ticinus and had to be rescued by his son. Well, after he recovered from his wounds, he proceeded with the original plan and joined his brother in Spain. There, the two Scipio brothers fought a successful campaign against Hannibal's brother, Hasdrubal. Over the next few years, they won a number of key victories, even taking Saguntum, the city that had kick-started this entire war.
All the way
Yet
down.
more Roman success. A trend appeared to be emerging. Whenever the Romans fought anyone other than Hannibal, they usually came out on top. Perhaps these other fronts would be the key to Rome taking back control of this war. Perhaps it was time for Rome to return to their old ways of being the aggressive go-getters. And perhaps it would help if Rome had a Hannibal of their own.
Really needs no introduction. At least in my opinion, he doesn't. Scipio Africanus, who I'm going to be using his full name, his title name, because there's 3 freaking Scipios. So we're going to call him Scipio Africanus because that is his name. Scipio Africanus is a legend in Rome. The fact that his name would be continually honored all the way up to the fall of Rome itself should say something. Because Scipio was unlike any other Roman leader. Scipio, being a young man, like very young man, in his early 20s, mind you, Scipio was one of the only intelligent men to basically realize, wait, if these guys keep winning against us, maybe we should start copying their playbook. And Scipio was also known for doing that and using his brain, which Scipio firmly believed that, yeah, no, we're not invincible. We can't win every battle because we keep losing to Hannibal. So it's time to think outside the box a bit.
Scipio, the younger, was the son of Publius Scipio, currently fighting in Spain. This made him a member of one of Rome's most prestigious families. Not much is known of his childhood, although there is one story of how he was getting hot and heavy with a young lady, only to have his dad barge in and drag him out wearing nothing but a cloak. This story was written by a Roman poet to make Scipio look bad.
Let's see, even him whose hand did oft accomplish mighty exploits gloriously, whose deeds wane not but live on to this day, the one outstanding man in all the world, him with a single mantle, his own father dragged from a lady love's arms. I mean, okay, yeah, you're making him look bad because that's literally how Roman politics was. But I mean, you cannot deny that, like it says, whose deeds wane not but live on to this day. Yeah. So nobody cares that the fact that he was dragged away from some woman he was hanging out with, because, yeah, it's his glory that's still remembered.
But by modern standards, has ended up making him look pretty rad.
Yeah.
My guess is if Rome had a high school football team, Scipio would be the quarterback. Scipio was only 18 when the Second Punic War broke out. He was at the Battle of Ticinus, where he famously rescued his father, and he was one of the survivors of the Battle of Cannae, after which he threatened to cut down any man who dared abandon Rome. He was a natural leader, and up to his ears in spunk, and therefore he rose through the Roman ranks shockingly fast. We need a new military tribune, but Hannibal has killed so many men, we're running out of options. Put me in, coach. Scipio, you're only 20. You can't be a tribune. Come on, coach. Put me in. Well, you do have a lot of spunk. All right, you're hired. We need to elect a new aedile.
Okay, so Tribune of the plebs required you had to have served, like, I'm trying to remember, you had to have at least served, I think, like, a few years in the military just to be eligible for the position. And then for some later positions, you had to have been, like, consuls at the top, but then, like, you know, tribune of the plebs, aedile, those other kind of jobs, you needed to have military time and military experience. So those roles were given out to men who had actually served already served in the army and would then use that as a stepping stool to go on and foster a political career. Like, and
Stop!
I know the video's not playing. Relax. Yeah, and ediles, y'all probably can't see it because I'm in the way, but it says edile, officials in charge of public buildings, festivals, and markets, which basically meant that, yeah, Scipio would have been in charge of new public works, organizing when festivals were going to be, managing the markets. Yeah, a lot of responsibility. But this is why it was given to military men or long-serving community members. And this guy's barely in his 20s. And yeah, it was extremely uncommon at the time. So the fact that he's getting these roles is, I think it's not just a matter of, man, you've really got to drive for this. I think it's also because there wasn't anybody better around because they were all dead. So, yeah.
Who do we have left? Put me in, coach. Scipio, you don't meet the minimum age requirement.
Yeah, there was an age requirement for edile, and most of these men who would get this position were in the military. So by the time they got out, they did meet the age requirement.
I got this, coach. I got this. Well, okay then. You're in. Ugh, my room's a mess. I gotta cook dinner. Oh, and would you look at that? My fly's down. Life sucks. Put me in, coach. Wow, you're so spunky. When Scipio was 25, however, he received some bad news. His father and uncle in Spain had both been defeated in battle, and shockingly, both of them were killed.
Now, this battle in question, if you saw the names of the two individuals fighting his father and uncle, let me go back a bit.
His father and uncle in Spain.
Right. So Gnaeus Scipio and Publius Scipio were both fought and were defeated by Hasdrubal and Mago. Hasdrubal is Hannibal's brother, and Mago was one of Hannibal's best men. He left both of them in Spain to basically ensure that, Spain was protected. However, Hasdrubal was a good leader. He was, but he was nowhere like nothing and nowhere close to his brother. So, honestly, probably shouldn't have trusted Bro to handle all the situations, but it should be noted that Hasdrubal kept the Romans from just bulldozing their way through Spain. And a lot of people like to give Hasdrubal crap, saying that, oh, he's nothing compared to his brother. It's Hannibal that deserves all the credit. Look at this. Like, this is an mostly accurate map. Like, the Romans didn't just bulldoze their way through Spain. Hasdrubal held them and, slowed them down for a while. So you got to give him that much. Not to mention, there's another thing that people don't like to talk about. You see, a lot of the reasons why Hannibal and Hasdrubal and all of their, men never really got the support they needed from Carthage is because, well, I guarantee Oversimplified's going to talk about it, but I'll give a brief explanation, a really quick one. Remember how I said put a pin in the idea about why Hannibal wasn't getting a lot of reinforcements or getting support? See, Carthage is an oligarchy, which means the people with money make the decisions and have all the power. Now, this was a problem because all of the men following Hannibal, they're all loyal to him and his family. Because Hamilcar, Hannibal's father, was the one who took Spain, built the silver mines, and paid those mercenaries out of his own pocket to have them be loyal to his family. So the more successful Hannibal is, the more power he has back in Carthage. So literally the Carthaginian government does not want to support him and doesn't want to support his brother, because if either one of them become too powerful, then the Barcan family would not only have basically full reign over Spain, but also Carthage itself, which again, oligarchies don't like sharing. That's the whole point. The whole idea is that when in an oligarchy, the richest assholes are the ones who make the decisions. And when a richer person comes along, those rich assholes do everything in their power to tear that person down because they don't like to share. if there's no one to go after, they'll backstab each other. But still, that's just how oligarchies work. Because remember, boys and girls, money doesn't buy you happiness. It can give you what you want, but it won't make you happy. And those oligarchs were the same.
Had both been defeated in battle, and shockingly, both of them were killed.
Now, the reason, like he says, shockingly, the reason he says that is because ordinarily it was really rare for Roman generals to die on the battlefield. Roman generals, like, this is not like, the age where, generals would fight alongside their men, like Hannibal and his guys do. Roman officers, especially if they were if they were patrician blood, because remember, there's the plebeians and the patricians. If they were patrician, they were going to be with the cavalry. I call them that. Roman equites sucked. Roman equites were awful. Roman equites were basically a bunch of noble brats and noble old men pretending to be cavalry, but Roman cavalry got its ass handed to it in every battle they fought. That's why they used mercenaries or auxiliary troops for their cavalry, because their own cavalry sucked. But yeah, these two would have been with the cavalry. So the fact that they died is terrifying, because that literally means that battle must have gone so badly that the Roman equites were surrounded and these two got butchered, which is bad.
The news must have been devastating for the young Scipio, but it was also devastating for Rome, as almost all of their Spanish gains were wiped away. Okay, listen up! We need someone to go and replace the Scipios in Spain. So, who's up for it? Come on, who's gonna go? Fabius, Spain seems unwinnable. There's no glory to be had there. Yeah, the glory is here, defending the homeland from Hannibal. Well, somebody has to go. I said, well,
put me in, coach!
Somebody has to go. Put me in, coach! Scipio was eager to be the one to go and replace his father and uncle in Spain. However, there was concern amongst the older senators. You're only 26. You can't lead a military campaign. He's right. That's a good point. And you're 71. You can't stand up without a little urine dribbling down your leg. That's a good point. He's absolutely right. Scipio.
That insult and that comeback might as well be used in modern politics today. You're old and you can't stand up without forgetting why you stood up or without pissing yourself. And there's also another thing. The reason Scipio got to do this is because, well, one, none of these assholes wanted to go, because many of them were cowardly and didn't see any glory in going and dying in Spain or, not doing anything. Again, they're senators. They were trying to cover their own ass. But the other thing was that if he was so willing to go, then why not let him go? There's also the fact that this is going to sound really messed up, but it's just how politics were at the time. Think about it for a second. His father and uncle are dead, meaning that two of the most premier members of the Scipio family, especially in Roman politics and Roman culture, are dead. So, if Scipio the Younger goes and dies, well, that means that the Scipian family has, let's just say a few parts of its family tree just got hacked off, which means it is now going to be very difficult for the Scipian family to recover from that. And I know that sounds really screwed up, that they would actively want this 26-year-old to die. But again, Roman politics was extremely cutthroat. Not only did it matter what family you came from and your ties to said family or other families, but it was not uncommon, to want other families' representatives to fail or get stuck with crappy assignments because it made their family look bad. The three main families of Rome that I can think of are, they are the Scipia, or the Scipians, the Julii, and then I'm trying to think what the third one was. The House Julii, House Scipian, and then there was one more. I I don't remember the third one. If you played Total War Rome 2 or Total War Rome, you know of the three like the three most premier families. Julii, which is the one Gaius Julius Caesar is from. So Julius Caesar. The Scipion family, which is where Scipio's from. And there was one more. I had it earlier and I lost it. Man, what were they? I really don't remember. But those were the three premier families. So if Scipio dies in Spain, well, then his immediate family basically has to bank all their efforts on whatever sons they have left. And if they don't have any sons, well, Bruti, thank you, 501st, the Bruti family. So, yeah, it would benefit the Julii and the Bruti families if Scipio died. And again, I guarantee you a lot of the senators had ties to the Julii or the Bruti or just to Roman politics in general and hated the Scipion family. So why not? Send him off. If he dies, well, then it's a huge blow that the family will take a long time to recover from. So again, there was probably some I hope this kid gets killed energy in there.
Scipio didn't meet the typical requirements for the position, but as the only person willing to go, this young piece of hot Roman meat was unanimously elected proconsul and sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. He hoped to carry out a campaign as impressive as Hannibal's had been in Italy. In fact, Scipio rather admired the one-eyed general. Scipio, you've got a Hannibal poster in your room. Yes, but he's the enemy. I'll let you in on a secret, Billy. You know how we're gonna win this war? By marching straight at the enemy? No, that's the old way. We've gotta be less Roman and a little more Hannibal. Hey, by the way, don't just barge into my room. That's an infringement of my privacy. Privacy? Privacy, you say?
Uh-oh.
Well, Scipio, if
NordVPN!
it's privacy you want, then you, my friend, need NordVPN. Don't touch me. How would you like to be innocently downloading inspirational photos of Nicolas Cage, only to realize it's malware stealing your data and telling all your friends you still sleep between your parents because of scowy dweems? Yeah, didn't think so. And that's why you need NordVPN. With a single click, NordVPN connects you to secure servers around the world, keeping you safe from malware and other online threats. Their Threat Protection Pro features go the extra mile in preventing your data being stolen by scanning your downloads for malware, blocking malicious websites, and even detecting fake online shops. DolceandBanana.com? I don't think so. But that's not all. With NordVPN, you're not just protected, you can also unlock better deals in other regions and access content that isn't available in your country.
Yep.
So get protected today by heading to nordvpn.com/oversimplified and grab an exclusive deal with 4 extra months for free.
These are some of his.
That's
these guys really love sponsoring him. It's so cool.
Oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now,
where were we?
Oh,
yeah.
Hannibal contained a young piece of hot Roman meat sent to lead the Roman armies in Spain. Scipio was charismatic, extremely confident, bold, and probably most importantly of all, he thought differently from other Roman generals. So, Skippy, what's the plan? Don't call me that. We're Roman, so same thing as usual, right? We march straight at the enemy, right? Get this, Billy. No, we don't. Scipio was a real outside-the-box thinker. There were 3 main Carthaginian armies in Spain, 2 led by Hannibal's brothers, Hasdrubal and Mago, and another led by Hasdrubal Gisco. Most Roman generals might have looked at these armies and said, I just gotta, march straight at these guys and kick their ass and stuff. But not Scipio.
Nope.
At a time when many believed winning battles won wars, one of Scipio's greatest strengths was an ability to see the overall strategy behind his actions.
Like I said, Scipio was able to do what Hannibal couldn't. Because, remember, there's a little saying when it comes to military stuff. Strategy dictates your tactics, not the other way around. Tactics do not dictate strategy. Basically, you have to ask yourself, what is the overall goal? That's your strategy. Your strategy is what's the overall goal, and what do we want to accomplish. From there, your tactics are then tied to that strategy. For example, if the strategy is we need to push the Carthaginians out of Spain, then you're going to be viewing it as, okay, what tactics do we use to make that happen? And the problem is that at this time, many generals, and to this day actually, many generals look at this. You can be the best tactician around. You can win every battle you fight. But the problem is, if you don't know why you're fighting and battles are just wasteful and don't really do anything, then you're wasting your time. And remember, time is always one of the key things that you can't account for. Time marches on whether you like it or not. If you want a good example of strategy versus tactics, I'll give you a modern one, the Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, the United States just figured, oh, we'll just fight the North Vietnamese like we fight everyone else. We'll fight them conventionally. We'll beat up, we'll kill enough people, and then they'll have to surrender. That is not how it works. Like, the overall strategy was just, oh, if we beat down enough of these guys, then we win the war. But that doesn't work against an enemy that uses guerrilla warfare and is so motivated that they don't want to give up. So, and you could see that in the tactics the United States used. More airstrikes, more incursions, that kind of stuff. They never really got how they were supposed to win that kind of conflict. The problem is, at the end of the day, yes, tactics means little without strategy. Thank you, Nicholas. The problem is that the main that whole joke about hearts and minds, the hearts and minds are what win, a modern conflict. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if your strategy is just beat down everyone, well, okay, except you're never gonna get rid of everyone unless you want to decide to start killing everyone, which good luck with that. That doesn't work. So Scipio was the first of the time, basically, to realize, okay, or for the Romans anyway, to realize, no, there are other ways. And he was also the first to realize, if I can, deprive the Carthaginians of Spain, that means no more money. And no more money means no more mercenaries, no more supplies, and no more reinforcements for any of the other theaters. So this guy gets it.
He knew that Spain was the closest thing Hannibal had to a base of support. With its mass resources and manpower, it's where Hannibal likely hoped to get supplies and reinforcements from. Spain's base of support was the city of New Carthage, the most fortified city on the peninsula, perfectly positioned to communicate with and receive supplies from Africa. And so, if Scipio managed to take New Carthage, he could take Spain. And if he took Spain, then maybe Hannibal would fall. To Scipio, Spain wasn't just some sideshow. It was the main show, and it all rested on New Carthage. But a surprise attack on Carthage's capital city in Spain? It was a ridiculous idea. Even if you pull off the 7-day forced march past the Carthaginian armies to New Carthage. Once you get there, you'd only have a couple weeks to take the city before the Carthaginians arrived to kick your ass. Sieges of cities that fortified usually took months, if not years.
Now, think about that. If New Carthage was going to take months or years to lay siege to, how long do you think it would have taken to lay siege to Rome? So now you see the argument of there's no way Hannibal could have laid siege to Rome.
So, Scipio, how are you going to pull this off? Well, first of all, to make sure the surprise plan stayed hidden, Scipio kept it a total secret, even from his own men. Where are we going, Skippy? I'm not telling you. Is it Disneyland? I'm not telling you. I think that means we're going to Disneyland. This secrecy kept the Carthaginians from preemptively reinforcing the city. As a result, New Carthage was left under garrisoned, because the Carthaginians believed it to be kind of naturally impenetrable. It was surrounded on 3 sides by a lagoon, and only accessible via a narrow isthmus. What's an isthmus, you ask? Maybe read a book. All right, Scipio, you made it to New Carthage. Now the other Carthaginian armies are only a 10 days march from coming and kicking your ass. Just what were you thinking? Well, Scipio had learned something crucial. Every afternoon, the tides made the lagoon around New Carthage briefly shallow enough to cross.
This has always confused me from a historical perspective. The fact that the Carthaginians have built Carthago Nova, which is New Carthage, by the way, have built this, and they don't know about this. Or maybe they do, and they just don't think it's that, important. But again, if your city's primary defense is the water around it, and the water recedes at a certain point of the day, I would kind of keep note of that. But apparently, they didn't. Either they didn't, or they didn't care. Like, I'm sorry, but if you fortified your city, you would think you would take notice of, oh, that's interesting. One of our defensive aspects literally melts away or recedes at a certain point of the day, meaning it is now a much wider front for us to have to protect. Did nobody notice? I don't know.
So, he ordered a large diversionary attack on the main city gates, distracting the city's defenders. Then, a small infiltration force traversed the lagoon, climbed the unguarded northern walls, and entered the city. They ambushed the guards and opened the city gates to the rest of Scipio's army. And just like that, New Carthage had fallen. In a single day, Scipio had taken Carthage's capital city in Spain. And he made it look easy.
There's also another aspect to this, the morale. This would have devastated Carthaginian morale. If Carthago Nova had held out for days, or maybe, before falling, that would have been a little bit lighter. Because people could have said, oh, they were overwhelmed. There was no way they could have held out. But the fact that it fell in a day, the capital city where all of this began, for them, their premier city in their new expansion of their empire fell in a day, would have been crushing for morale. Like, most men would have wondered at that point if you could even beat Scipio's army if they were able to do that. So, yeah, like this would have been a crippling morale blow. There's also the fact that remember, a lot of these guys were mercenaries. And if Carthago Nova falls, then there's no guarantee that that money's going to keep coming anymore. So that, along with the fact that they just watched their whole capital get blitzed in a day, yeah, good amount of those men probably decided to get while the getting was good. So, yeah, that also hurts.
With it, he seized much of Carthage's war supplies, several silver mines near the city, and various powerful Iberian tribes even joined his side. And now he was in a great position to take on the other Carthaginian armies in Spain. Wow, Skippy, you're amazing. Don't call me that. How'd you know the lagoon would get shallow? It's almost like you speak to the gods. No, I told him. All the local farmers know about the yes, that's it. I speak to the gods. Scipio had no problem allowing his men to think he was divinely inspired.
Why not?
Roman writers also tell us another of Scipio's traits.
Hey, he's not the first to do that. Alexander the Great did it too. Alexander the Great literally claimed that he was like a son of the gods. And like the ordinary soldiers thought it was great and, believed it mostly believed it. They at least believe he was divinely touched. Meanwhile, his officers and his generals were like, born of Zeus? Dude, we knew your dad. We knew your dad. We served with your dad. Your dad wasn't Zeus. But again, it's the morale. So if your troops think you're divinely blessed or divinely inspired, take it and run with it.
He was apparently quite merciful in victory and often protected the inhabitants of captured cities. Spencer! What are you doing? Well, I was just about to murder this family. Hey, bad Spencer! No! Can I at least kill the dad? No! What about the... No! Oh, you're mean! The Carthaginian generals in the region must have been shocked at the loss of their capital city. There was now a Terminator in Spain, and he was coming. In 208 BC, he made a move on Hasdrubal, hoping to defeat him before the other Carthaginian armies could come and link up. When Hasdrubal heard Scipio was coming, he said, Hasdrubal...
Appropriate. Though I'm wondering why he didn't. I'm guessing maybe he did, but why wouldn't you pull back to make reinforcing with the others easier? Like, if Mago and Gisco are so far away, why not pull back? Why wait for Scipio to show up? If you're that afraid or you're, not prepared for a battle, get the rest of your reinforcements together. You're too spread out. Maybe he did fall back and got jumped because the Roman legions may have marched on foot, but I don't think people realize how far the Roman legions could march in a day. So I'm willing to bet Hasdrubal did fall back, but was terrified to see just how damn fast the Roman legions were.
Did the sensible thing and climbed a big hill for safety. Hey! Get down here! I want to kill you. Fat chance, Vin Diesel! Well, he doesn't have to be rude. So what's the plan then, Scipio? This time, we march straight up and at him. Right? Right, Scipio? Billy?
No.
Scipio once again displayed a distinctly not Roman approach to fighting, when instead of marching straight up and at him, Scipio feigned a frontal skirmish, only to pull off a surprise uphill envelopment. Not an easy thing to do, but Scipio had trained his army to pull off maneuvers that typical Roman armies couldn't. After the battle, the defeated Hasdrubal fled Spain, hoping to link up with his brother Hannibal in Italy. And Hannibal desperately needed the help. As Scipio was dominating in Spain, Hannibal's struggles in southern Italy continued. He was convinced that if he just received ample supplies and reinforcements, he could reverse his fortunes and get back to kicking Rome's ass. But for the remainder of the war, he would suffer a frustrating lack of support from the Carthaginian Senate. After Cannae, Hannibal had sent his brother Mago to Carthage, where he famously poured out golden rings taken from fallen Roman knights.
Not knights. The proper term. Well, okay, I get what he means. He means the nobility. The Roman nobility would have ridden horses and would have also, had more premier-looking armor. But no, these rings were taken off Roman patricians, basically. Some of those rings also included the former consuls that Hannibal beat the stuffing out of before Cannae. And yeah, there were a lot of them.
He told the Senate that with reinforcements, Hannibal could finish the job. But a growing faction in the Senate, possibly jealous of Hannibal's rising influence, opposed sending any help. In the end, a large number of the reinforcements gathered for Hannibal now ended up being diverted to stop Scipio in Spain.
So, yeah. Like I said, now we can fully pull that pin out. Yes, the Carthaginian Senate at this point actively went against Hannibal in as many ways as they could. One, because they did not want Hannibal gaining even more power. For Pete's sake, think about it. If Hannibal takes Rome, Hannibal Barca, conqueror of Rome, good God, the man and his family would be untouchable in Carthaginian politics. They could probably run the whole Carthaginian Senate if they wanted to. Hell, Hannibal could have made himself a dictator and run Carthage himself. Not that he probably wanted to, but the point stands. They did not want Hannibal or his family getting any more power. So naturally, they send all the reinforcements over to Spain so Hannibal, doesn't gain any more influence. But there's another side to this coin. Don't forget, Spain's where all the silver mines are. The conquering of the silver mines by Hamilcar Barca, Hannibal's dad, is what allowed Carthage to pay off all the war reparations that they owed Rome after the First Punic War. Everything else was basically going back to Carthage. So naturally, this Senate of oligarchs doesn't want to lose all their money. I mean, they want to keep getting their money because, God forbid, they go without for during a war. But no, they want their money. So not only is it a betrayal of Hannibal because they don't want him getting power, they're also willing to leave Hannibal hang him out to dry because they want to get paid or they want more money. So yeah, they send all these reinforcements to Mago and Gisco so that they don't lose the silver mines. Mind you, this will end up being a waste of men and resources.
Just as he had hoped, Scipio's campaign in Spain was actively harming Hannibal in Italy. However, those reinforcements meant that when Scipio made a move on the remaining Carthaginian armies in Spain, they now likely outnumbered him.
Yep.
With the odds heavily stacked against him, it would take some serious skill to win this battle. This time we're gonna march straight at them, right? No, Billy! The preceding Battle of Ilipa is often considered Scipio's masterpiece
Ilipa. It's Ilipa, by the way.
because it was positively oozing with deception and trickery. First, both sides spent several days forming up and facing off.
Remember, as Sun Tzu said, all warfare is based on deception. There are no rules when it comes down to full-on, straight-up combat. There may be rules in your overall strategy. That's why we don't have war crimes and everything. But when it comes down to battle, there are no rules in war. You fight to win, plain and simple. And if deception and trickery help you win, then go for it.
Without actually fighting. On each day, Scipio placed his strongest Roman legions in the center, with his weaker Iberian allies on the sides. Seeing this, the Carthaginians were like, "This guy's an idiot. We've seen his plan. His strongest troops are going to be in the center. So let's form all of our battle plans based on this information. I'm sure he won't change anything at the last minute." Then, when the day of battle came, Scipio woke up the Carthaginians with an early morning attack, causing them to rush out of camp without breakfast. When the Carthaginians lined up with their strongest troops in the center to meet Scipio's, they were stunned to find that Scipio had completely reversed his order. The weaker Carthaginian sides now found Scipio's strongest bearing down on them. Then, in an extremely impressive maneuver, the well-trained Roman wings even stretched out during their approach, hitting the Carthaginians from the sides. The Carthaginian center could have turned to help, but Scipio had ordered his center to approach so slowly that Carthage's center could do nothing but just stand and wait. In this way, the outnumbered Scipio had cleverly controlled events so that the bulk of the strongest Carthaginian troops couldn't even fight during the battle.
He pulled a Hannibal. This is literally a Hannibal tactic. So, and if anyone's wondering, wait, how did they not know he had changed his formation? They would have been so far away from each other that by the time they realized the formation had changed, it probably would have been too late. Not to mention, they're on the plains of Spain. If there's probably dust and dirt kicked up everywhere, and they probably couldn't see. So, by the time they noticed, it was way too late. And again, one thing that the Carthaginians, always seem to rely on is the elephants. But the problem with elephants is that by this point, the Romans know what they are, they know how dangerous they are, and they know how to counter them. So, yeah, the elephants were a non-issue at this point. So, yeah, this is a move that even Hannibal would have been impressed by.
He had completely removed them from the equation. The incredible Scipio had inflicted a monumental defeat on a much larger enemy force.
Now, I know some of you are probably wondering, how the hell did he kill about 50,000 men? Well, aside from the fact that his guys literally had them boxed in and surrounded, which is not good, that means it would have been even harder for the Carthaginians to retreat from the battle. The thing is, most kills, like this, probably would have occurred, at the height of the battle and afterward, when men were running away. And remember, the Romans had horses, so they probably chased down and killed a good number of men that broke and run. So, and as for why the Romans suffered so few losses,
I think this calls for a little history lesson.
how did they counter the elephants? Depends. Sometimes the Roman formations would open up to let and they basically put their spears or their pila. The front troops would put their pila, those javelins, stuck in the ground like spears, and would make these open channels for the elephants to go through, and the elephants would go through the channels because, they didn't want to go through the spears and get stabbed. The other way they did it was by scaring the elephants. The elephants were normally scared of horses, and vice versa. So, what would end up happening is that the horses, the cavalry might be used to, frighten the elephants and get them to break formation. And there was also the fact that horses can be trained to kind of ignore pain from time to time, but the elephants weren't really trained that way, if I recall correctly. And so if an elephant got hurt and broke formation or ran, the panic would spread to other elephants. And remember, an elephant's basically a tank at the time. If it gets moving, you're not stopping it unless you can't really get the reins back on it and get it to stop. It's just going to go. And remember, at this point in time, warfare is formation based. So even if no one, maybe the elephant doesn't, destroy all of your men, but it does break your formation, which means now you got to get all your men back into formation, which is going to take time. And if the enemy's attacking, well, good luck. Now you're a lot more ineffective in fighting. So those are some of the ways they did it.
And the Battle of Alipa was the final nail in the coffin for Carthaginian Spain. Yet more tribespeople continued to side with the Romans, and the remaining Carthaginians retreated to the coast and eventually fled the peninsula. And would you look at that? In just a few years, the incredible young Scipio had turned Spain completely red. The Carthaginians must have been stunned. His Spanish campaign had almost been as impressive as Hannibal's campaign in Italy. In fact, see if any of this sounds familiar. In Spain, Scipio had used the environment of the battlefield to his advantage. He staged ambushes by concealed troops. He treated local tribespeople well, earning their friendship. He even once forced his enemy to come out and fight him without breakfast. Each and every one of these tactics were possibly borrowed from a certain one-eyed general.
Yep.
In all the battles Scipio had fought against Hannibal, it seemed he may have been taking notes.
Hey! Scipio!
What?
Stop stealing my tactics!
I'm 700 miles away.
I can't hear you. What?
What did you say?
Yeah, what?
What?
What? Yeah.
What?
Better yet, Scipio's achievement in taking a well-fortified city, plus his understanding of the overall strategy, has led some historians to argue he wasn't just as good as Hannibal. Scipio may actually have been better. This young man, who many in Rome had doubted, had just shut those silly billies right the flip up. Mere years ago, it looked like Rome had no chance of even surviving this
And
war.
now,
But now, the momentum of war was shifting astonishingly fast. And for Hannibal in Italy, things continued to head south. Before Scipio had even gone to Spain, the Romans had placed Capua, Hannibal's largest city in Italy, under a dangerous siege. And in order to rescue it, Hannibal needed to take drastic action. Fast. Man, everything's falling apart. Fine, I'll do it! Do what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I'll march on Rome. Hannibal, that conversation was 5 years ago. It's too late. No one's trying to convince you to march on Rome.
I said I'll do it!
Quit nagging me! Ugh.
Hannibal with the steel
finally
chair.
marched on Rome, hoping it might draw the Romans away from Capua. The Romans saw Hannibal approaching their city, and they freaked the hell out. Hannibal is said to have closely approached the city walls, inspecting the defenses, as the Romans inside quivered in their togas. However, Hannibal probably knew he had no chance of taking the city. The whole thing was a feint, and Hannibal soon left. The Romans famously coined the phrase, Hannibal is at the gates, to describe a moment of crisis or severe desperation. But for accuracy's sake, the phrase should probably be, Hannibal is at the gates. But don't worry, it's just a feint to draw the Romans away from Capua. And it didn't even work, because the Romans stayed at Capua, and the Capuans misunderstood and thought Hannibal had abandoned them. And so, they surrendered the city. But apparently that's not as catchy. Despite a few successes, including an ambush in 208 BC, where Hannibal managed to kill both consuls in one go, Hannibal was slowly but steadily losing his grip on southern Italy. Even Hasdrubal, who had fled Spain to join Hannibal, never reached his brother. He made his own dramatic crossing of the Alps, just as Hannibal had done. But unlike Hannibal, the second Hasdrubal arrived in Italy, he was immediately pulverized.
Yep.
The Romans then took his head and threw it over the walls into his brother's camp. Hannibal was
Oh, hey, look, Gatomon and Gomamon plushies. So I guess Oversimplified's a Digimon fan. That's actually pretty cool.
is becoming extremely isolated.
Now, if Hasdrubal's forces had been able to unite with Hannibal's, could they have had enough men to take Rome? Doubtful. I don't think they would have been able to take Rome. However, with Hasdrubal's help, they would have been able to better, push the Romans away from southern Italy, because Hannibal would have had maybe double the manpower. So he would have been able to, he would have been more flexible. He would have had more men to send to different locations. But again, didn't happen. So, yeah.
After his impressive conquest of Spain, Scipio returned to Rome a hero. And when the election came for next year's consuls, despite not meeting the typical requirements, Scipio won in a landslide.
Yes, typical requirements to be consul is that you had to have, I think, 20 years in the military at least, or something like that. You had to have 20 years of experience, basically. So the fact that he became consul was a big deal. And I'm also willing to bet that this probably upset some of the patrician families because, well, damn it, the kid didn't die, and now he's more popular than ever. So, oops. Why did Hasdrubal try copying his brother, given how bad the trek was? It was the only way in. They couldn't sail to Rome. There's no way they had the ships, or they wouldn't have been able to get past the Roman navy. So they just took the trip over the Alps. So, and I mean, they made it. So they probably figured that was their only option. So.
But the question now was, what would he do next? All right. What's your plan then, Scipio? You're gonna go fight Hannibal now, right? Get this, Fabius.
No.
No. Scipio's plan remained the same as before. Don't attack the monster directly. Attack his base of support, which now happened to be Carthage itself. That's right, Scipio would invade Africa. However, Scipio understood that any invasion of Africa would stand a much better chance if he could secure an alliance with one of the African tribes. Throughout the war, Carthage's far superior Numidian cavalry, which came from this part of Africa, had played a critical role in winning battles.
Yep, the Numidian
was
light
divided
cavalry.
between two rival kings. In the east, the king Syphax had sympathized with Rome for much of the war, and so at some point, Scipio visited Syphax to ratify a treaty. It just so happened, however, that the Carthaginian general Hasdrubal Gisco, whom Scipio had fought in Spain, also arrived at the exact same time. And so Syphax invited both Scipio and Gisco for a meal.
Oh,
The
that
two
must have
men
been
fought
so
for Syphax's
awkward.
alliance, and by Roman accounts, Scipio was positively charming. Come on, Syphax, stick with us Romans. We'll build a naked statue of you. Very enticing. If you join our side, Syphax, we'll give you a 2% discount on figs. You like figs, don't you? Not really. Hey, Syphax, check this out. Wow! Hey, Syphax, check this out. Did he just defecate? I believe he did. Well, Scipio, you clearly are the most charming man in the Mediterranean. My alliance is... Syphax, I'll let you marry my extremely hot daughter. Yours! Humana, humana! Unable to compete with Syphax's libido, Scipio instead made contact with Syphax's rival, the other Numidian king, Massinissa, who was a longtime ally of Carthage. Scipio told Massinissa, if you join the Romans, I'll help you defeat Syphax and become the ultimate Numidian king. And so Massinissa was now on Team Rome. Good job, Skippy. With a Numidian alliance solidified, Scipio prepared for his invasion of Africa. He raised a volunteer force that included many of the disgraced survivors from Cannae.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Taking the Cannae survivors. That's a smart idea. Taking the survivors of Cannae and basically telling them, hey, this is a chance to redeem yourself. I don't know how many of these guys he brought, but I guarantee all of them probably fought like men possessed during the battles that would come later. Because if these guys, remember, these guys were the survivor of the biggest massacre in Roman history. They have probably no honor left. But to basically be told, I'm taking you with me, this is your chance for redemption to both the gods and your families, Yeah, no, these men probably fought like demons. So this is a smart idea, actually.
And he set sail. Well, Terry, any news from Italy? Has Hannibal won the war yet? Who on earth?
Here's Scipio!
Here's Skippy!
That's actually a terrifying face, actually. But yeah, that's probably what it felt like for them as soon as they found out he landed.
The Roman landing sent a clear message to the Carthaginians. You don't invade us.
We invade
No.
you.
We invade you.
Now, if you're wondering why the Carthaginian navy didn't stop this, remember, Carthage is still rebuilding after the First Punic War, and most of their naval ships are probably still doing mercantile work. Not to mention, by this point, the Romans have kind of figured out how naval battle works. Like we saw in the First Punic War, if you've seen the First Punic War series, we know that the Romans eventually got good at naval warfare. So they eventually figured it out. So probably what ended up happening is that even if the Carthaginian navy was nearby and could have rushed to stop this, Scipio probably had an entire Roman fleet protecting his invasion force. So there's no way they could have stopped this.
For the first time in the war, the Carthaginian homeland was under threat, and the Carthaginians needed to defeat Scipio at all costs. They gathered a huge army led by Hasdrubal Gisco with allied Numidians led by Syphax, and they ordered them to get Scipio the hell off their continent. Sources say at this point, Scipio was severely outnumbered. Scipio? That army's huge! There's no way we can beat off all these men! How are we gonna beat off all these men? Vigorously!
Sorry. I'm a child. I remember in part 2 where a Carthaginian asked Hannibal the same thing at Cannae, where he's like, how are we gonna beat off all these men? And Hannibal's like, and the guy's like, you know what I mean, Hannibal.
And while maintaining eye contact.
Jesus, okay, calm down.
As always, Scipio had a plan to deal with the larger enemy force. It just so happened that Syphax was offering to try and broker peace between the Romans and the Carthaginians. And Scipio smelled an opportunity. He sent a Roman envoy to Syphax's camp. And when they got there, Syphax was like, hey guys, welcome to the enemy camp. Just before we begin negotiations, a small safety demonstration. As you can see, our huts are made of grass and reeds. Very flammable. If there was even a single spark, this whole place would become a raging inferno, and all my men would burn alive. Very interesting.
Cool.
The Roman troops then reported back to Scipio about the Numidian camp, its construction, and most importantly, its flammability. Then, the following night, as the sun was setting over the beautiful African plains, and the Carthaginians got all comfy in their beds, they began to gently dream of Carthaginian figs and child sacrifice. Good night, Carthaginians. Good night, Syphax and Gisco. Good evening, Scipio.
Good luck finding your teeth.
In the night, shadowy Roman figures approached the Numidian camp. As the Numidians lay in their beds,
you should have
Scipio
guys on
executed
watch.
his plan.
Oh well. Die, I guess.
The camp erupted into flames. With the flammable wooden huts, the fires spread terrifyingly fast. Men were burned in their beds. Those who awoke in a panic, believing the fire to have been some kind of terrible accident, rushed to the exits without their weapons and armor. Those who saw the fire from the Carthaginian camp also rushed out unarmed. And when they got there he was. Scipio,
Hello.
the Romans, and their steel.
Yeah.
The terrified Carthaginians were massacred, and with heavy casualties, Hasdrubal and Syphax fled the scene of the disaster. Scipio followed this incredible success with another victory against the pair at the Battle of the Great Plains. After that, Massinissa chased his rival Syphax into his kingdom, where Syphax was captured. Massinissa was now the ultimate Numidian king. He entered Syphax's capital city. He seized Syphax's palace. He even married Syphax's wife. And when Scipio got mad at him for marrying a Carthaginian girl, he then poisoned his wife. Boys will be boys.
Okay, that's a weird way of doing things, but all right. Odd. I mean, I get why Scipio was angry about him marrying a Carthaginian wife, because she probably could have swayed him to be more sympathetic to the Carthaginians, but Jesus, poisoning? All right, sure.
Having defeated the Carthaginian armies in Africa, almost nothing now stood between Scipio and Carthage. And the Carthaginians were freaking out. What do we do? What do we do? There's only one thing left to do. Recall him. Well, Hannibal, you've been here in Italy for 16 years. This is practically your home. You're basically Italian. Yes, Gerald, and I've had such a lovely time. I ate spaghetti, did this with my hands. I've committed my whole life to this campaign, and once Rome has fallen, it'll all have been worth it. Hannibal, you have to return to Carthage. Your Italian campaign has been for nothing. Your whole life has been a waste. No! Imagine being Hannibal in this moment. You left Carthage when you were 9. You probably barely even recognize your own homeland. The kingdom he had built in Spain with his father? Gone. And now his Italian campaign, his vengeance. Was it really all for nothing? But that was that. Carthage was under threat, and Hannibal had to protect his home city. As he left Italy, in Rome, there was celebration, but also some trepidation. Now, Scipio would have to face Hannibal in Africa, where Hannibal would have home advantage. While Hannibal was on his way, the Carthaginians stalled for time and approached Scipio for peace talks. Hey, look, we never meant to start an all-out 2-decade-long war, but you did. No, that was Hannibal. He's to blame for all of this. Well, all right then. Sign this peace treaty. Okay, let me just get my signature right on there. He's here. Yes! Oh, look who's here, you bald prick! You're so dead now, Skippy. Don't call me that! After Carthage proposed peace, only to then go back on it, the normally merciful Scipio was enraged.
Yeah,
he began refusing to accept town surrender, and instead began burning everything to the ground, selling everyone into slavery. Hannibal, he's burning our towns.
Now, many historians are of two minds about this. The first is, yes, Scipio basically ran out of mercy and decided, okay, I'm done playing this game with you. You are literally dragging this out and, for nothing. And so I'm just going to let my people lose because I'm tired of being the nice guy. However, this does have a more strategic value to it as well, because during this period, Hannibal is in Carthage with the Senate telling them, hey, we do not have properly trained troops for a fight. We need to spend the following months training them and getting them ready for a proper battle. Because these men, I didn't bring a lot of veterans with me. These men that you've given me need training. They're raw and inexperienced. We need time to train and practice and to train the elephants that he was given. But, well, Scipio's out there burning stuff down. So, and unlike the Romans, back when Fabius was dictator, the Carthaginians can't really stand by and watch their stuff get burned. So they force Hannibal to take the field even though he's not ready.
Go stop him! Guys, he's obviously trying to lure me out there to fight on those flat plains, where his Numidian cavalry will give him the advantage. It's a trick. Well, it's working. Go and fight him! It's obviously a trap, and we're falling for it. Go and fight him! Hannibal set out to meet Scipio in the western plains. And here came Scipio's final test. Finally, the teacher would face the student. The two greatest generals of all time in one last, decisive battle. Would Hannibal's genius still shine through? Or would Scipio prove that he had surpassed the master? Before battle, the two great generals rode out from their camps and met in person for the first time. Hannibal, I'm a huge fan. I thought you'd have more hair, and I thought you'd have more eyes. Touché. They then had a conversation, which I'll paraphrase. Hannibal said, "At the start of this war, I had great fortune in Italy. But look at me now, a sad old man who, like other sad old men, failed to conquer Rome. Your fortune can change rapidly, Scipio. You should consider negotiating a peace rather than risking it all in one last fight against me." Very eloquently put. Scipio then replied,
Q! Negotiate? Negotiate what? I took Spain. I'm about to burn your pathetic city to the ground. What could you offer me in negotiations? I already have it all! Ah!
Seriously though, Hannibal, I am such a big fan. And so,
Okay, so that's not how I remember it, at least in the stuff that I've read and studied. Now, to be fair, Scipio did basically tell Hannibal, "I'm not going to negotiate. You have nothing you can offer me because I've beaten everyone else. Like, there is no reason for me to negotiate with you because all that does is let you live a day longer." However, there was also a good deal of mutual respect, and Hannibal, Scipio took to heart what Hannibal told him, actually, about how, hey, fortune doesn't last, and eventually it'll turn on you, which Scipio did take to heart. But Scipio also told Hannibal, look, at this point, there is no avoiding this. Like, I don't want to have this fight, but your people and, like, your Senate refused to negotiate with me, refused to cooperate, and now that you're here, yeah, you have nothing you can offer me. So this ends one way or the other. Now, to be fair, I'll be real here. Historically speaking, even if Hannibal wins this battle, which, duh, Rome survived a long time, so I'm pretty sure Hannibal doesn't win this. Y'all know that. But even if he'd won, this war would have been, it still would have gone against the Carthaginians at this point. They've got nothing now. Spain's conquered, like Scipio said, and even if Scipio dies, okay, big deal. They can still send more men to invade. So, yeah.
it was settled. The two great generals would face off one last time in the epic Battle of Zama. Scipio gave his men, consisting of many survivors from Cannae, a pre-battle speech, telling them not only would they gain redemption, but they could become masters of the world. Hannibal told his men probably nothing, because most of them didn't even speak the same language.
Yeah, no. And to be perfectly honest with y'all, I'm surprised he held this damn army together with all these different languages in it, because modern armies trying to concentrate and work together with multiple languages is confusing as hell. I don't know how he did this, but somehow he did.
As the two armies lined up for battle, something interesting became clear. Hannibal had more infantry and hoped to use them to brute strength the Romans. But Scipio had the nimble Numidian cavalry and hoped to pull off an envelopment. It was a complete role reversal of Cannae. As the battle began, Hannibal made his first move. He sent his 80 war elephants to smash through and weaken the Roman infantry. Scipio had the perfect response. He had altered his formation to create passages between the Roman maniples. His light troops stepped aside at the right moment, revealing the gaps ahead of the charging elephants. Elephants, if given the choice between a suicide charge into spears or a nice clean escape, will probably choose the escape. And that's what happened. Some elephants were so frightened from the noise that they even turned and smashed back into the Carthaginian cavalry, which the Roman cavalry then engaged. Your move, Hannibal. Hannibal wasn't an idiot. He knew that he was fighting superior Numidian cavalry on open plains. So when his weaker cavalry ended up being routed from the battlefield, he probably wasn't surprised and hoped the Roman cavalry would be lured as far from the battlefield as possible, because his infantry needed time to do a clever little job. Hannibal had the numerical advantage, and he had positioned his army in 3 lines. The weaker troops were at the front, while his best men, the army that had been with him in Italy, were in the rear. As the Romans smashed into the weaker front lines, they managed to cut through them, but suffered losses and exhaustion in doing so.
Thing is, against a normal army, that probably would have worked. But you see the Romans do the same thing. I mentioned this before, way back in the original Second Punic War videos, but the Roman army, the Roman maniple system works like this. There's 3 ranks of infantry. The first rank are the Hastati. These are, the Hastati are your frontline infantry. They're very lightly armored. They get a shield, a gladius, a helmet, maybe like a little piece of metal to protect their chest. And they're made up of younger men. They're the frontline troops. After that comes the Principae. These are older men, who have slightly better gear, have experience under their belt and are very well disciplined. And finally behind them, the Triarii, which are the spearmen, usually the elite of the elite. They have decades of experience. They are fully clad in armor. They have spears for their preferred weapon, along with a shield. And, see, that's the problem. By the time, against anyone else, the idea of just, keep attacking me, my veterans are waiting, well, that's great. Except, so are the Roman veterans, the Triarii. And these guys rarely got to fight in most battles, so they were probably frothing at the mouth to get an opportunity to fight. So
the same with Hannibal's second line, so that by the time the Romans reached Hannibal's superior third line, the two sides may have now been about equal in number. But the exhausted Romans had just fought an entire battle to get there, while the remaining Carthaginians were fresh and ready to go. Hannibal was still a genius. And this is where the final race began. Could Hannibal's stronger infantry finish off the Romans before the Roman cavalry returned from their pursuit? Who would be quicker, the Carthaginian infantry or the Roman cavalry? The answer: the cavalry.
Yep.
They had called off their pursuit just in time to turn around and hit Hannibal from the rear. And that was the deciding move. As the sandwiched Carthaginians were hacked to pieces, Hannibal knew he had lost, and he escaped the battlefield. It was a battle that some historians say was well fought on both sides. Both showed their genius, but fortune fell in the favor of Scipio. With just a few thousand Roman casualties compared to 40,000 Carthaginians, Scipio had won.
Yeah.
Hannibal advised the Carthaginian Senate that it was time to surrender. 17 years of war, finally over. The terms Rome placed on Carthage were harsh. They
extremely harsh.
Lost territory and were prohibited from starting any more wars with anyone without Rome's explicit permission. Carthage basically became a weak Roman client state. And what of these two military geniuses? Well, Scipio returned to Rome triumphant. For his victory in Africa, he was given the title Scipio Africanus. He had delivered Rome from an existential threat, and so, from here on out, he was primed to dominate Roman politics. He was even offered to become consul for life, but he humbly refused. Politics being what it is, however, jealousy eventually grew. Scipio and his family ended up battling accusations of corruption, and Scipio, possibly becoming tired of Roman politics, retired to a nice country house by the coast.
Told you. I told you guys. And Hannibal was right. Hannibal told him, your fortunes will turn against you as the years go by. And they did. And again, like I said, that was kind of one of the problems with Roman politics. The patrician families and the senators were always trying to backstab one another and step over each other. What does Africanus mean? Africa. It's a title. They're basically saying Scipio of Africa, basically. So, because he won in Africa.
Hannibal also took a leading role in Carthaginian politics after the war. But again, due to jealousy, factionalism, and a possibility of arrest by the Romans, he eventually entered exile. He spent the remainder of his years out east, even advising enemies of Rome. Rome's hatred of Hannibal endured, and they never stopped hoping to someday capture the monster. One story is told of how when a much older Hannibal was chilling in the city of Ephesus, a Roman delegation was sent to the city, and in that delegation was Scipio Africanus. The two men met for the second time, and they seem to have gotten along quite well. Scipio asked Hannibal who he thought the three greatest generals of all time were. Hannibal placed Alexander the Great in number 1, Pyrrhus of Epirus in number 2, and in third place, himself. Scipio then asked, "And what if you had defeated me at Zama?" "Well, Scipio, then I would have been the greatest general of all time. Please, call me Skippy." Eventually, around 183 BC, Hannibal, now in his 60s, came under threat of Roman capture. After a long life, he chose to take some poison. According to Livy, his last words.
Okay, not cool. Okay, appropriately timed, but not cool.
Let us now relieve the Romans of the anxiety they have so long experienced, since they think it tries their patience too much to wait for an old man's death.
That is the ultimate, like, that is the most eloquent way of insulting your enemies before you die. Basically saying, yeah, I'm gonna kill myself because apparently they're so terrified of me and they're so impatient that I'm just gonna, they don't want to wait for me to die because they're terrified that I might come and haunt them, that I'm just gonna kill myself. That's actually, that's pretty hardcore.
Wow, Hannibal. What a dignified end.
Ew.
Gross. And there you have it. The Second Punic War. Finally done. It took 17 years to end the war, and on a personal note, making these videos has also taken 17 years off my life.
But we appreciate it, Oversimplified, we really do.
Carthage began to recover from the war, shockingly fast, however, and anxieties over Carthage would remain in Rome.
There is no next turn!
There is no next turn, there is no next war. Except there is.
In particular, one senator would begin calling for one last crusade against Carthage to end the threat once and for all. He famously began to end all of his speeches with one singular phrase, one of the most famous phrases in Roman history.
Carthago delenda est. That Third Punic War, God, it's not even a war. So the Third Punic War, where do I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I'm willing to bet he'll make a video about it. Here's the deal. The Third Punic War is not even a war. It's literally just the Romans deciding to kick an old man while he's down, and they take Cato the Elder's words to heart. When he says Carthago delenda est, they mean it. Not only do they storm Carthage itself, the city, they burn it to the ground, and then they salt the earth. And I mean that literally. They go around throwing salt everywhere to stop anything from growing, because salt kills plants. So they literally attacked the city, burned it to the ground, and then to make sure that nothing else would ever set up there or no life would ever flourish there, they toss salt everywhere just to wipe it from history. Was it a massacre? I mean, basically, by this point, Carthage, when the Third Punic War starts, Rome's even more powerful, and Carthage is not even Carthage does recover, but they're not nearly as powerful as they were during the Second or First Punic War, and the Romans just come down, win a few battles, and then just burn Carthage and salt the earth. They glass. That's a good way of putting it. They basically glass Carthage, which is a very good way of putting it. A messed up way of putting it, but a correct way of putting it.
Did you know about the SCP, that is a bridge that if you cross it, you will grow an undeniable urge to hate Carthage?
But Carthage is gone. Does that mean you hate the history of Carthage? Because that's weird. That's weird. That's funny, but at the same time, Carthage is gone. So, yeah. Like I said, by that point, there was no it was over by that point. The second, hold on, let me actually look up how long the Third Punic War lasted. Ow. The Third Punic War, yeah, it lasted 3 years. Reminder that the first Punic War lasted 20 years, something like that, 20 years. The second Punic War lasted 17 years, and the third one lasted 3. So you tell me if it was worth it in the end. Like, it was a massacre. Like, there's a reason we don't talk.
Oh, no.
There's a reason we don't really talk about the third one very much. It's because nothing really happened in it. That said, I know I said we played Dishonored today. I'm really not feeling it. That was fun, and it took, 2 hours. Good God, I was having a blast. But really, at this point, I'm too wound up on history to go and like play a game or anything. Besides, 2 hours of progress isn't really progress in that game. So we'll hold it off till next time. I am glad you guys enjoyed this, though. I have fun doing this kind of stuff, and hopefully, there'll be other videos that we can react to. But that said, hold on, I'm not gone yet. That said, we are gonna go raid someone tonight. I know this was a really shorter stream than we're used to, but hey, I think this is a good place to stop. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's see, who can we go say hi to? I'm not gone yet. Hold on, we're gonna go say hi to someone first. Who can we go say hi to? Maybe we can catch someone before they head off. Bango. I don't know who that is. Who's Bango? Because I was gonna go say hi to Maricity, who's streaming Valheim, which I can never get into, but I get why people like it. So we're gonna go say hi to them, I think. Yeah, we're gonna go say hi to Maricity, a dragon VTuber. So let's go do that. Sorry, she's just only got like 10 people watching, and I like showing support to the small streamers. 5 to 7 people watching. So let's get this raid started. As always, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to entertain you guys.
Please.
I hope you have a wonderful night. I've been Zaruk Windcaller, and remember that the memories we make in life, good and bad, make us who we are. Don't change them for anything. Love you guys. See you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye-bye.